Good morning, everyone. I think we'll get started now. It's 9 a.m. I'm going to call the meeting to order. This is the legislative legislative committee meeting. We have with us this morning Councilmember Joe Boscaino in remote location. Good morning, Councilmember. And,
Good morning.
We are still waiting for Dr. Parker, who will also be at a remote location, but we'll go ahead and start with our reports from our consultants in Washington. First up is, I'm going to also announce that pulling one item from the agenda, we wanted to gather more information on that. That item is the consideration the federal bill HR 4421, authored by Desaulniers. Some questions have come up that we want answered before we proceed with that, so we will pull it for today and bring it back at another time. So first up is our consultant, Gary Heitzma. And Gary, give us the latest that isn't in your report. If there's some updates to add to what's going on in Washington that we don't have in your written report. Good morning, Gary.
Good morning. Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Happy to send greetings from Washington, D.C., where we're all celebrating the great victory of the Washington Capitals hockey team today. Everybody's very happy about that. But we're not. There's a lot of not so happy people with regard to some mean Republican leader there in the Senate canceled our August recess on us. So, we'll have to see about that. Well, maybe it's a good thing. Maybe Congress will finally get something done this year. But anyway, my quick update here. I have three quick items to report today. In my written report, I've updated on the proposed rulemaking on CAFE standards, and also the pending final rule on the glider trucks. A couple of items that I know we're very attentive to. I guess the update is that there in late May, early June, the EPA Science Advisory Board got together, and among its recommendations to the EPA administrator was to hold back on these two rules pending a better science review. And this is an interesting development. Here this Science Advisory Board was partially remade by the EPA administrator, who insisted that he wanted to replace, I think, 14 of the 44 members of that committee with more people with views closer to industry and the administration. But they came out with a recommendation that may slow up these rules a little bit, but we'll have to wait and see. There's no obligation on the part of the EPA to accept the recommendations from the Science Advisory Board, so we'll just have to wait and see how that goes at this point. Secondly, I'd just like to report on the Department of Transportation grant program, one of their major grant programs that we keep a close eye on. It's the infra grant program that deals with major highway projects. And word has leaked out about the awards for the latest round of that. They came out this week. It hasn't been officially announced by DOT yet, but they did apparently grant 27 awards, releasing $1.5 billion for major highway projects. One California project in Los Angeles on an Interstate 5 congestion relief project. And most of those awards ended up going to rural areas in conformance with the administration's approach to this grant program. And finally, I'd just like to report that a appointment at the White House of interest to us is that the staffer Francis Brooke, who some of the AQMD staff has met with in the past, who's been an energy and environment staffer, has been promoted to be special assistant to the president for economic policy and energy and environment issues. So he's got even a bigger role there. So we'll be talking to him as time goes on. So that's my quick update report today. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Gary. I want to welcome Dr. Parker, who's joined us. Good morning, Dr. Parker. We know that Dr. Brooks won't be with us today, and we won't expect Supervisor Rutherford. We do expect Supervisor Nelson to come when he's available. The other thing I want to take care of at this time is to introduce a new member of our staff. We have with us this morning Terrence Mann. Could you stand? Maybe we can get the camera on Terrence.
You gotta stand.
And you'll be the assistant executive officer to Marianne Coleman, who's in charge of our compliance section. And so the most interesting thing that I learned this morning about Terrence is that he played basketball, professional basketball in Europe, I believe.
Taiwan, actually.
Oh, in Taiwan. Okay, in Taiwan. Okay, in Taiwan. Okay, so for those of you here on staff who have the basketball team, you may want to recruit him. Okay, so we'll move on now to Mark Kadish. Mark, good morning. You're with us this morning.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Good morning, everyone. I'll give a very brief update. First, I guess I will underscore, I think as you all know, the House Interior Appropriations Committee, which is chaired by, the subcommittee chaired by Congressman Calvert, has moved its bill through the committee, still waiting fuller action. But in his bill is $100 million for the DERA program and $55 million targeted airshed program. Both, I think, highs for those programs, and something that we at South Coast have been asking him to help us with, and he's been a champion on these programs for years. So just to underscore that he was successful, and I think that's good news for us. Second, I will just mention that we've been working with your staff on trying to apply some additional pressure on the EPA on the ultra-low NOx emissions standard, and have been talking to Congressman Aguilar and also to Chairman Calvert about potentially arranging a colloquy on the floor. And we've done the same thing with, on the Senate side, their bill, the Senate Interior Appropriations bill, should be moving next week to markup, and we've been talking to Senator Feinstein and Chairman Udall in order to encourage them to perhaps adopt some report language urging expeditious consideration and action by EPA on the ultra-low NOx emissions. So we will continue pushing that and working with your staff. Those are really the brief updates that I have.
Great, thank you. Thank you for your work on our low NOx petition. We would really like to see that move through the regulatory process. So, okay, thank you. And next we will turn to Caleb Froelich from Cassidy and Associates. Good morning, Caleb.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you. I will also keep our remarks brief from our written report. Just a couple quick updates. Today, the House passed the Energy and Water Appropriations bill just a few hours ago, so that will now be moving. We'll be waiting for Senate action on that bill. Even more importantly, in follow-up Mr. Kadish's comments, the Senate Interior Appropriations is going to start their process, and they haven't released their bill yet. That will be early next week, and they'll move through the process of getting it through the subcommittee and full committee next week. So we'll be monitoring the funding levels for both DERA and other programs, but that will be coming next week, and we are in very close contact with Chairman Murkowski's staff on that, working on report language as well. In addition, yesterday the House passed the Trump administration rescissions package, which is pulling back $15 billion in spending from previously allocated funding. Of interest for South Coast is that it rescinds $4.3 billion in Department of Energy loan funding for fuel-efficient and advanced vehicle technologies. It is unclear yet whether this rescissions package will move through the Senate, but until June 22nd, all they need is a simple majority of votes. So if all the Republicans unite, then that package will likely pass prior to June 22nd. That concludes our update to our written report, and we're open for any questions.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Caleb? No. Okay. We'll move over to the state side at this time, and our first report is from the Quintana Cruz Company, and we have Roxy Becca Mohammadi on the line. So good morning, Roxy, and give us an update on the report.
Good morning, Madam Chair and Board. Thank you so much. I'll just be discussing some of the few of the bills that we've been tracking for you. AB 2506, authored by Assemblymember Burke, which was the state vehicle fleet near zero emission vehicles bill, actually did not make it off suspense, and so it is now dead, unfortunately. The other bill that we're working on is Assembly Bill 2091, which is with Grayson, who has accepted some revisions to the bill, and it is actually now in the Senate. And then most importantly is the public fleet rule that has now been published and in print. So it's a gun amendment that Assemblymember Gibson made in order to provide the public fleet rule for South Coast Air Quality Management District. So the legislation is AB 327, and so it's currently being worked on. So that's where we're at.
Okay. Any questions? Is that it, Roxy?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Roxy on this report? No questions here, so we'll move on now to California Advisors. We have Jacob Moss on the line. Jacob, good morning.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members. I will also keep my update brief, primarily because budget negotiations are ongoing, and all of the items that we're tracking include the cap and trade expense plan, AB 617 implementation funding, and the concern we had with shifting money from the Moyer program to DFW to backfill their budget. None of those items have been finalized, and all of them are in conference committee now. We're hoping to have a resolution as early as Monday. We anticipate the budget deal being struck by then, so that the bill can be voted on the 15th. But these things have a way of missing deadlines and continuing on. So we'll see what happens. But all in all, we've had very positive conversations with all of our items. We have some pretty strong allies in both the Senate and the Assembly, both staff and members. We had some great meetings. Wayne and the South Coast contingent have been in Sacramento a few times and have had some pretty positive meetings, and we've had some pretty great conversations. So, as it sits right now, we have pretty solid year looking like financially as far as incentive dollars are concerned. So hopefully next month we'll have a great story to tell about how things went down at next Ledge Committee meeting. A couple of quick updates about some of the bills that we are working on. SB 1502, which is our sponsored bill that gives us the ability to send public notices electronically, is up for hearing this Monday. All signs look good. And SB 210, we are continuing to have conversations with the author's office. This is the bill authored by Connie Leyva, that Senator Connie Leyva, that is a small check certificate program for heavy-duty diesel trucks. They have our amendments, and we are continuing to talk with the author's office. And then a couple of quick updates about some changes in committees. There are a number of them that I won't list, but the one that is most impactful for us is there is a new chair of Senate Appropriations. Senator Lara has moved to Labor Committee, and the new chair of Senate Appropriations is Senator Portantino. Also, Assemblymember Christina Garcia returned to the Assembly, but was stripped of all of her committee positions, both her chairmanships and her membership. So she's a sort of a floor vote only, which leaves Assemblymember Marsucci as the permanent replacement for her permanent for now. And then in my report, I had mentioned who the budget conference committee members were. The Assembly conference committee members were not named at that time. Since then, since conference is underway, those 5 members from the Assembly are Assemblymember King, Assemblymember Bloom, Assemblymember Arambula, Assemblymember Chavez, and Assemblymember Overnolte. So those are the members that we are continuing to maintain contact with as we negotiate our budget items. And that's my update.
Thank you. So is the status on the funding for AB 617 the same as in your report? 50 million annually for 2 years, but some debate over where the money comes from?
That is, yes, that's the status, and we feel very positively about that, but obviously until it's done, it's not done.
Okay. Not done till it's done.
That's right.
That's right. Thank you very much. And we'll move, any questions for Jacob on this report from my committee members? No, seeing none. We'll move to Gonzalez and Sons. I believe we have Paul Gonzalez on the phone this morning. Good morning, Paul.
Good morning, Madam Chair and committee members. Just to pick up a little bit where Jacob left off, as he had mentioned, the state budget is due next Friday, June 15th is the constitutional deadline. As we all know, if they don't pass their state budget by then, they will not receive a paycheck. So you can pretty much guarantee they will have a budget adopted by next week. However, due to Proposition 54, that's the 72-hour in print rule, the budget is most likely going to have to be in print by Tuesday in order for them to vote on it by Friday. So as Jacob was saying, everything will most likely be wrapped up on Monday, in print, written, and being able to be seen by the public by Tuesday so that the way they can take the vote on Friday. But all of that said, those rules only apply, I should say the constitutional deadline only applies to the main budget bill. As we know and as we've seen in the past few years, the budget trailer bills, which typically have a lot of the meat on the bone, can go on through the rest of session. So they'll have until the end of session, August 31st, to pass any additional budget trailer bills. So we'll continue to keep you guys apprised as the issue progresses forward. I wanted to provide a quick update on one of our bills, AB 2453 by Assemblymember Eduardo Garcia. This is the bill that allows for school facility bonds to be used for grants to update air filtration systems at schools. As you're aware, the bill had to be passed out of the House of Origin. The House of Origin deadline was June 1st. That means all Assembly bills had to go to the Senate. All Senate bills had to be over in the Assembly or they were dead. AB 2453 passed off the Assembly floor in a 77-0 vote. So it's flying through the process. It's now in the Senate and is scheduled to be heard in the Senate Education Committee on June 13th. So we'll continue to work with the author on this bill and keep the committee apprised as it progresses. And that's the end of my report, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you very much, Paul. Any questions on Paul's report? Okay, seeing none, we will move on our agenda. Thank you very much from our consultants this morning. And the next item on our agenda is updates on bills. The first one is AB 2145, vehicle air pollution, and I think we're going to have a report from Philip Grab on that. Philip, good morning.
Yes. Good morning, Madam Chair and committee members. AB 2145 by Assemblymember Reyes. This is a bill which is sponsored by CalSTART and would modify the Clean Truck, Bus, and Off-Road Vehicle and Equipment Program, or the Clean Truck Program, to fund additional technologies and would expand the criteria for funding through the Alternative and Renewable Fuel and Vehicle Technology Program. This bill makes changes to both programs to reflect the latest technological developments and status of the clean vehicle market. It makes eligible for funding new types of projects such as grid integration, integrated storage solutions, and charging management demonstration and analytics. These are areas that require further research if the state is going to help electrify the medium and heavy-duty zero-emission vehicle sector. It would also require the California Energy Commission through the ARF VTP to emphasize development and deployment of technology and infrastructure. Overall, this bill is in line with AQMD's goals of promoting the development and deployment of clean transportation technology, reducing criteria pollutant and toxic emissions, and protecting public health. This bill would also prioritize funding for disadvantaged communities which are disproportionately impacted by environmental pollution. Thus, staff recommends a support position on this bill.
Thank you. Are there any questions on the contents of this bill from our committee members?
Move staff recommendation.
I'm sorry.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded.
We need a
roll call vote.
now.
That's right. We have to do a roll call because we're on remote locations. Please, roll call.
Councilmember Buscaino?
Aye.
Dr. Parker?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Now I need to ask.
I need
to state the public comment.
It's 3-0.
But I need to ask for public comment on this. Is that correct?
Yes.
Is there anyone in the public who wants to comment on this bill? No one's jumping up? Looks like we're okay. Okay. All right. We'll go to the next item on the agenda, which is SB 1260, Jackson, and let's see, who's going to report on this?
So let me see.
Philip too. Okay. Go ahead, Philip.
Sure. SB 1260 is an omnibus fire prevention and forestry management bill that would, among other things, promote long-term forest health and wildfire resiliency, authorize federal, state, and local agencies to engage in collaborative forestry management, and require CAL FIRE and CARB, in coordination with local air districts, to develop and fund a program to enhance air quality and smoke monitoring, and provide a public awareness campaign regarding prescribed burns. That program may include purchasing new year-round air quality monitors and shall include adequate funding for local air district participation and implementation costs. Overall, this bill could have a positive effect on reducing air pollution within the South Coast by facilitating the use of controlled burns to reduce wildfires and the resulting severe air pollution, thereby protecting public health. Staff also has recommended amendments. Staff recommends an amendment to clarify that the air quality program created by this bill should actually include purchasing new rapidly deployable air quality monitors rather than stationary year-round air quality monitors. Further, something that we did for a previous bill, staff recommends amendments to the bill that addresses an issue that complicates the granting of controlled bird permits at the local level. Current law only allows air pollution control officer to permit controlled burns in counties with a population of 6 million or less. That provision complicates AQMD's ability to issue controlled burn permits for fire hazard mitigation within LA County specifically, which has a population that far exceeds 6 million. Staff proposes an addition to the bill that would remove current law's reference to a county population restriction so that AQMD can have clear authority to issue controlled burn permits within LA County. Thus, staff recommends a support with amendments position on the bill.
Great, thank you. Any questions, Dr. Parker? Go
I
ahead.
have a question.
Yeah.
When you first stated what the bill was about, it's who's going to fund it and what is the funding level of the amount for this bill?
So the bill doesn't specify, it says upon appropriation by the legislature. There have been a few entries in the state budget that's still being worked out for controlled burn monitoring funding. So that is still unclear as to the source and the level of funding. But this basically says this program will be funded, so it requires funding for implementation.
My concern is, my colleagues, that we don't enter into a situation where it's going to require us to spend a lot of money without the state also stepping in and participating on some kind of equitable pro rata basis, where we would have to take that out of our general fund in order to be able to accomplish that. So I think that I would recommend part of those amendments is to basically put some, if not a definitive amount, some kind of reference to the adequate funding itself will be basically prorated, appropriated by the state as need be based on the population density.
We actually have some options, Dr. Parker, with regards to state mandates versus funding. And it's actually an issue that we're looking at with regards to AB 617. And in some of the negotiations that are ongoing, there's a discussion that if the state provides a certain level of funding, that we would, in essence, release any claim to go after them for funding. And we're all in the negotiation process on that. But I would imagine that in this particular case, if there's a mandate to do additional monitoring or to acquire additional monitoring equipment without any appropriate funding, we would be able to petition the state in essence, get in line for that funding.
And this particular bill is kind of specific in saying that it shall include adequate funding for implementation and participation by local air districts. So hopefully that should cover whatever cost would be required if this bill were to pass.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay.
I'll move the items.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, but I'm going to call for public comment before we vote, so that in case anyone says anything that wants to make the comment. Any public comment? No? All right, roll call vote on this, please.
Councilmember Buscaino,
Aye.
Dr. Parker,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell.
Aye.
Motion passes 3-0.
Thank you. So, is there any other business to be? Excuse me. Is there any other business to be brought before the committee at this time? No. Is there any public comment from the audience on any item that has not been on the agenda that anyone wants to talk about? Seeing none. Our next meeting is July 13th, so we will now adjourn. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.